Yeah, there's a question from Assyrian Relief, who is our friend. We've been seeing you around lately, so appreciate everything you've been doing like that. But the question says, how do you respond to Muslims who don't accept the scriptures from the Hadith? I'd only say a couple quick things. I would say that as far as I can tell, they seem more incoherent because the Quran tells them to, talks about immolating Muhammad, but you can't do that per se without the Hadith because Muhammad's only mentioned a few times in the Quran, as far as I'm aware.
Right. Were you going to say something, Sam?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Sorry, my phone. I'm sorry. Tomorrow will be better by the grace of God. But apart from the Hadith or these secondary sources, you cannot make heads or tails out of much of the Quran. I'll give you two examples for the sake of time. Assyrian Relief, God bless you. He's a fellow Assyrian. Lord bless you, fill you with the Spirit for his glory. You ask the Muslim, you take him to chapter 111 of the Quran. It's called Surah Al-Lahab, the chapter of the flames. And it says, cursed is Abu Lahab, cursed is he. It curses him and his wife to the torment, the tortures of hellfire. Number one, ask the Muslim, who is Abu Lahab? Who is his wife? He's going to tell you that's Muhammad's uncle. Say, show me that from the Quran. Where did the Quran say that this man called Father of the Flames is Muhammad's paternal uncle? What was his sin and who is his wife? All of which you need the Hadith to make sense out of. Otherwise, you're left with a chapter that's supposed to be eternal, uncreated, where a person and his wife is damned to hell and we don't know why. So without the Hadith, you can't make sense out of the Quran. Another example. Chapter 33, verse 37, which is a passage we'll be discussing, God willing, tomorrow in connection with adoption. It talks about Muhammad telling Zayd to keep his wife, right? Even though he knew in his heart that Allah was about to make Zayd's wife lawful for him as an example for adoptive fathers to marry the divorcees of their adopted sons. My question is, who is Zayd? Who is his wife? And what the hell is this passage talking about? You cannot get any of those answers from the passage itself. You have to have recourse to the Hadith. So if you reject the Hadith, throw out the Quran because much of it is incoherent, unintelligible babble.
Not only that, but what happens in a lot of other countries if you openly declare your rejection of the Hadith?
Yeah, you know what's going to happen.
So it's an option that Westernized Muslims have, but it's not an option really, yes, to be honest, that Muslims in Middle Eastern context for the most part really have, as far as to make known.
And just so you know that there are Quran-only Muslims who have a serious, carefully thought out Quran-only position. I think they run into trouble. Hamza Abdul Malik is one of them, right? And they understand, they have actual arguments for why they reject the Hadith and they're only going with the Quranic revelation. But the vast majority of people who say, "Oh, I don't believe in the Hadith," are just doing it out of convenience because they're embarrassed by what's in the Hadith. Because I know this because these same Muslims who say, "Oh, I only believe in the Quran. I don't believe in the Hadith." I go, "Really? What's the Shahada?" They say, "Oh, it's La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah." So, okay, show me that in the Quran. It's not in there, right? That comes from the Hadith.
Can you do it? Can you do it in the pimp voice? I'm just kidding.
La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Right? Allahu Ba. All right. So, I got my sunglasses around here somewhere. But,
even the 5 prayers are not in the Quran. 5 prayers and how to perform them. They're not in the Quran either. Yeah.
So those are the problems. One, even basic Muslim beliefs that if your Muslim friend knows anything about Islam, he's doing and practicing things that are in the Hadith. They don't come from the Quran. The Quran lays down Muhammad as the pattern of conduct. Where's that pattern of conduct found? You got to go outside the Quran. The Quran says that you have to submit to all of Muhammad's decisions, every one, find no resistance against them. Well, the Quran, according to Islam, is not Muhammad's decisions. That's the word of Allah. So if you wanted to know Muhammad's decisions, well, you're going to have to go outside of the Quran to the Hadith, and that's where you end up dunking your flies and drinking camel pee and things like that.
Exactly. And by the way, the most important objection, I forgot to mention this, you cannot tell me what the Quran is apart from the Hadith or the secondary sources, because when a Muslim hands me a Quran consisting of 114 chapters, how does he know that? The Quran doesn't tell us it's composed of 114 chapters and X number of verses. That's not in the Quran. So even to know what the Quran is, you have to go outside of the Quran to even discover that information.